What's poppin', players? Welcome back to a Two Penny Games review. This time, Rise of the Ronin. I am your host, Tavin and Phil, here with my good friend and co-host. Say hello to the people, Phil Shoemaker.
Hello.
Hi.
I played Ronin.
Right, Phil, you've played Ronin. I've played Ronin. We've played, honestly, probably equal amounts of Ronin. And let me tell you what, probably don't want to play too much more Ronin.
Yeah. I think I've fallen off pretty hard.
Anyways, well, let's not spoil it all. Let's get right into it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is, of course, your Rise of the Ronin review. I am your lead reviewer for Rise of the Ronin. And ladies and gentlemen, Rise of the Ronin is a fine game. It's fine. It does nothing overly offensive, but it doesn't do anything special. I think, to start with the positive, undeniably, the best parts about it are its combat systems, which early on do shine very well and are very fun and interesting to play with, but they quickly lose their luster as you are thrust into the open world and you discover just how useless some of those game mechanics are. It just doesn't take advantage of them in too many interesting ways outside of the boss fights, but even then, the boss fights aren't as complex or interesting as something you would find in a Sekiro, or even Team Ninja's last game franchise that they were known for, Nioh. I think that game was way more interesting. Rise of the Ronin, to me, is desperately trying to find a middle ground between Ghost of Tsushima and Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, and it fails to meet either standard. I don't see a reason why you would pick up and play Rise of the Ronin, at least not at full price, because there are so many other games out there that you can play that would be way more worth your time. Specifically, the two games I mentioned, Ghost of Tsushima, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. If you want an interesting, engaging open world that has a lot of fun held within it and a lot of secrets you can unveil, go to Ghost. If you want really engaging, complex, and difficult swordplay gameplay, go to Sekiro. This, as a meeting of the minds, doesn't work. Its open world design is very much stuck in the PlayStation 3 generation. It looks like a PlayStation 3 game. It's not very pretty to look at all. Game feels, it's that weird, like, the character feels overly responsive. So, like, the jump feels like they jump too quickly and they move around too quickly. It just doesn't feel right. There's not a groundedness to the character. They're like hopped up on monster energy at all times. Its character creator is pretty boring, and its story really has nothing special. In fact, I would say that its story is possibly the worst part about the game. It's boring and bad and underwritten, and it's just not interesting at all. The highlights, as I said, are the gameplay, and I would even argue its presentation. I think its presentation is pretty solid. There are moments of cinematography and so forth that I think are quite interesting. But overall, this game just fails to impress pretty much in every single way. And it's a big disappointment because the gameplay trailers were so good. But yeah, I like, in any way that you can measure a video game, Rise of the Ronin is painfully mediocre. Phil, am I wrong? Am I crazy? Am I too harsh or anything like that? What is your experience with the game?
I would like to argue on the side for Ronin, but unfortunately I really can't. We had a lot of high hopes for this game. I kind of mentioned it on this past Saturday's Piggy Bank, where the 76 on OpenCritic is really starting to make sense for me.
Yep.
Me myself, I think I'm 18 hours in, and I don't see myself progressing much further.
Yep.
If I do go back after playing the phenomenon that is Unicorn Overlord. But yeah, I have to agree. I think that this game shines whenever you're fighting a dude. At least like towards the beginning of the game.
When there's one dude to fight.
I was even having fun. I was even having fun with like having like 3 dudes and a dog coming after me, or like a wolf, and like some of the really big bosses. I mean, of course, that's just one dude, but that's like one big dude,
Yeah.
And I thought some of the traversal was really fun too. I like the grappling hook. I think that's pretty fun and flashy. I like the glider. I think that's pretty entertaining for a little bit. But once again, it's you do it, and then the glider's also kind of weird because you expect it to work more like, like more like a game like a glider where you kind of get momentum going down and then you can kind of go a little higher up, but like it's really just you're
press the button
slowing
and
your
let it
fall.
go. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
just slowing your fall. That's all it's good for. It's basically like the paraglider from Breath of the Wild, but not
in
as not
in in
as
some ways, I feel like it's less of a slow fall and just a gentle glide. And there's just no
mm,
point in changing your directions at all. And honestly, like in my experience with the glider, it feels more like, oh, I just run out of stamina before I get to my destination. So that's really the problem, as opposed to like, oh, I didn't make it because like Batman Arkham is like a great way to compare this, where
yeah.
like you feel so in control in Arkham City, in Arkham Knight, of your gliding and your ability to control yourself there and keep the momentum going. Rise of the Ronin should have the exact same mechanics here, and it just doesn't.
Yeah.
Like
They really try to, because they have like your grappling hook that you can kind of grapple
yeah.
into a glide. And then there's some like kite things in the air that you can grapple onto and kind of propel yourself again. But in the end, it kind of just falls flat. And it's just not as fun as I really wanted it to. It's not as fun as the gameplay trailers made it out to be. Um,
I really thought
and
this combat system was gonna shine more than it does. Like,
yeah,
it's fun and flashy at first, but then like you see the same stabbing animation like the 30th time in a row, and you're just kind of like, I don't care. Like, this is not
honestly,
effective.
I really wish they had stolen the like stance system from Ghost.
They
Like
try
just
to play
how,
with it with the different weapons.
yeah,
Um,
but like I just wish it was one of those things where you could like let's say like take away all of like the extra weapons, just add more
Yeah.
stances that Ghost had. Just just add more of them
Sure,
and
but
just
like
have
this is also
yourself
my
kind of
problem.
choose between them.
This is also my problem is they do have like a rock paper scissors esque system in the game where like I was using the dual swords, so the dual swords don't work so well against the guys with the big clubs and so forth, versus like guys with single swords it works real well against. Excuse me. But I didn't feel like it was enough of a difference to make me switch.
Yeah.
I never switch. Like, I stay in my zone at all times. I tried to switch. I played around with it, and I was like, all right. But for the most part, like, when fighting normal dudes, which is what you're doing most of the time anyway, I just kind of felt like this game is fine just button mashing it and just kind of, like, forcing your way through the enemy stamina gauge and breaking their guard until you can get that killing blow or just that heavy damage. Like, sure, yeah, parry is good, feels good. I like the parry, but I didn't feel like the parry was dependent. Like, I didn't need to depend on the parry. I just needed to depend on outputting major amounts of damage. And I think part of that is because the stamina gauge or their guard gauge, whatever you want to call it, breaks too easily. And it refreshes too fast. Where, like, in Sekiro, like, if you are doing consistent parries, it doesn't matter if you leave the guy alone for a minute, that gauge doesn't move that much. Whereas here, the second you give the guy a chance to breathe, it starts refilling. And so it's just like, all right, well then it's just a matter of like just keeping the pressure on until it breaks and I can get that extra damage in. And I do like the mechanic that they have in the combat where after an attack, you can press R1 and the blade gets bloody as you're attacking them, or it gets dirty as you're attacking them, and you can flick the blade to clean it of all the blood that's gathered on it, and that gives you back a portion of your own stamina.
It's basically like your energy, yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun resource mechanic to use, but it's not as effective as I would like it to be, and honestly, it's just not as necessary as it probably should be. I just don't think any of these gameplay mechanics were in the oven long enough, or they don't interact with each other enough to create a gameplay loop that is fun and exciting.
I can very much agree with what you said about that little move, because I used it maybe once my entire playthrough, and I forgot how to do it and never did it again.
I also forgot how to do it, and I had to look it up in the menus. I'll say they lay out everything in the menus very well. I think the menus are good. But like, if that's what I'm reaching to for a compliment, oh boy,
it's a pretty decent tutorial,
Yeah, it's cool, it's fine. On that note, though, the button configuration is atrocious.
I did not hate it at all.
I
did
hated
not
every
hate
choice they made. Every single choice they made to like how the buttons work together and stuff. I hated it all. I don't like wise parry on triangle. That's awful. That's a terrible feeling.
That's the one thing I hate. I wish I could have just like hit the guard at the right time. I would have liked that more.
Yeah, let me hit left bumper, left trigger, something like that. The parry makes the block useless in my opinion. I would rather just dodge or parry at all times because why would I block and just take the stamina damage? Why? What's the point? And the guy doesn't take any stamina damage. I like the little fear mechanic that they put in there where the fear works as kind of an anti-stamina gauge. So like the better you're doing in combat, the more parries you're pulling off, the more signature moves or kill animations you're doing, the more killing you're doing, the more the enemy gets scared of you, and it starts working against their own stamina bar. So the higher the fear gauge is, the less stamina they're able to regain. That's cool. Again, a lot of these systems are cool in concept, but I just don't feel like they interact with each other in a meaningful way to make me want to chase that mechanic, to be able to be like, oh, I can do this now. It's kind of the opposite coming off of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Every combat mechanic in Rebirth folds into each other. So you want to use them all so that you can build up and have your opportune moment to use it. And it feels good when you do use it and so forth. Like it all builds on itself. This one I feel like has a lot of cool ideas, but none of them come together in any meaningful way. And God, man, wow, this story is just totally underwritten. Like there's nothing here. There is nothing here to grab onto, to connect to.
I got to the point where I was just like, a cutscene would happen and I would get up and get a refill on my drink.
Yeah, I skipped every cutscene. After I hit the 10-hour mark, I was like, I don't care. Like, get me through this.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of it is having a creatable character. I think they made a mistake by having a character creator in this game and making the character mostly silent protagonist, but except in a few moments where they say a few words and the actor's not very good. But it might
Are you
be
playing
because
as a male or female?
Female. But
same. I thought she was good though. I liked her.
Yeah. And then they do the weird like create two characters thing, and this game has weird co-op mechanics. It's just like they just wanted to do a little bit of everything here, and so they did nothing well. Like it's too much. You've got too many plates spinning for you to excel at any one thing. I talk about how no single thing in God of War, the new God of War games, 2018 and Ragnarok, no single thing about those games are 10 out of 10s. It doesn't have a 10 out of 10 story. It doesn't have a 10 out of 10 combat system. It looks beautiful, but like you can nitpick some things and so forth. But everything is at such a high level that it becomes a 10 out of 10. Everything is an 8, so it becomes a 10. This game, I think, is the opposite, where they're trying to do too many things, and it doesn't allow them to get anything up to a 7 or an 8, so everything comes down to like a 5, and that brings it down even lower, Well, I'm not going to go. Everything is like a 6, so it becomes a 5, And there's just so many 6s. If they cut down, if they trimmed it down, and it was more like if there's a dozen categories of 6s, and they brought it down to 8, it would have come up to a 6 or a 7, But because there's 12 of them, it comes down to a 5 for me.
I get you. I kind of had so this is what happened after we recorded Piggy Bank last week. Is I sat down, I was playing some Ronin, and I was like, I think I'm done with this for the night. I'm going to switch to something else. And that something else was Unicorn Overlord.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was just rescued. I was delivered from the abyss. Yeah. Because like I was immediately like back into what I was playing, Yeah.
And I'm having a semi-similar thing about it. I reviewed Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and I love the game. It's one of my favorite video games of all time. But I dinged it for its open world content. It's very checklisty and kind of boring to do. But just the experience of existing in the world of Final Fantasy VII is so much more interesting than what's happening in Rise of the Ronin that it's forced me to gain an appreciation for all this side content. And because of that, I spent time that I should have spent playing Ronin going around the open world doing meaningless tasks in Rebirth because it was just that much more interesting. And like, wow, that sucks because they're both open world games. And bro, like, you are hanging your hat on your open world, whereas Rebirth is hanging its hat on its story and its characters and its combat. You're hanging your hat on combat and open world. And your open world is, wow, this is bland. Wow, there's nothing interesting here. And it's another thing where it's like, all right, I can go collect cats. Cool. What does that give me?
It gives you like some weird currency that I think it's some other upgrade. There's so many like currencies that do different upgrades, and the skill point system is so weird. And
yeah, I was gonna lead into that. Going around unlocking shrines, unlocking towers gives you all these different points. Clearing out bases gives you different points. But the way that they've divided their upgrade trees, one, I don't feel the need to get anything in that upgrade tree because I feel like I'm fine without it. And two, there are 4 different upgrade trees, each of which work off of 2 different upgrade currencies. One is universal amongst them all, and it's called the skill points. But then each other upgrade tree is divided up amongst like classic RPG. What would you call those? Skills or RPG categories, being like speed, dexterity, strength. What's the other one?
Well, I mean,
charm.
There's only 4. It's charm, intelligence,
not speed,
dexterity, and strength.
Yeah. So, and like each of those has their own dedicated skill point. So the dexterity tree has the universal skill points and dex points, and I'm like, why? Why did you choose to go this route? Like, you're just divvying it up and making it harder to acquire skills that I want. And you're making me feel like, oh, fuck, I got to search through 4 trees and try and find specific skills that I need. And some of them are like, I'm doing a dex build, so I'm mostly getting dex upgrades, and that's cool. But like at the same time, like it would be nice to have some of these strength upgrades, but I can only do it dependent upon this unless I switch weapons. But I don't want to switch weapons because I like these weapons. And the game isn't punishing enough for me to force me out of my comfort zone. And sure, I could turn up the difficulty, but the difficulty does the thing where it's just, all right, damages or enemies take more damage and give out more damage. They're not performing new skills. They're not mechanically more interesting. It's just numbers. So like,
it's just more of the same pattern.
Yeah. So why am I doing this? Like, this game is unengaging at every single opportunity. Like, this is how you create a disengaging video game.
It's just overall just incredibly disappointing from all the hype that we had going into this game. You know?
Because it presented so well. Like, sure, it didn't look like visually great, but I don't hang my hat on visuals all the time. And it tries to get in its visual bag at times where you go and you find a field and it's got different colored trees and so forth. But, you know, you just look at it and you go, Ghost of Tsushima did this so much better. So, yeah, again, closing thoughts, man. I'm not going to say there's no fun to be had here, but there's so much better games you could spend your time playing. Go play those. Certainly. I think replaying Ghost of Tsushima or replaying Sekiro would be a better time than playing this game once. So yeah, definitely like just go hang your hat on those games again. If you want to scratch sort of a ninja samurai itch, I guess this game will do it. That's another thing. Stealth mechanics, very bland, very boring, very basic.
Yeah.
Not anything more exciting than what you get in Sekiro, which is kind of disappointing because Sekiro doesn't care about its stealth mechanics that much. And so yeah, I just can't recommend Rise of the Ronin, and I think we're better off without it.
Yeah,
ladies and gentlemen,
I definitely do not disagree.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be it for your Rise of the Ronin review. Quick one, nice one, short one. Let us know what you thought of the game down below. Are we being too hard on it, or are we not being hard enough, or are you finding a lot of enjoyment in the game? Personally, I was expecting this to be one of my contenders for Game of the Year, like at least in a top 5 conversation. So I'm very disappointed this will not be making my list. I know for fucking certain. And it's made me a lot more excited for Stellar Blade because the Stellar Blade demo came out and everybody's raving about it. So I'm excited about that game. Anyways,
yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, until next time, have a great time. And Phil, say goodbye to the people.
Bye, people.